Welcome, goblins and ghouls, skeletons and
Spiders.
spiders, to a very Halloween-themed episode of Podpodcastcast.
Get ready to be scared.
Yup, that's right. It's a spook. It's
It's gonna be scary.
so scary. Prepare yourself for
Gonna
a
be
scary, frightening review
scary.
of podcasts. Welcome to Podpodcastcast. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Hello, and welcome to Podpodcastcast. It's a podcast where we talk about other podcasts. I'm Sam.
And I'm Honor. Okay, if
Honor, you know what? Hey, I like that intro because it's different from the other ones you do. It's not like monotone or sing-songy. I like that. That was a good improvement, and I want to say I noticed your hard work, and thank you.
yeah, you're so welcome. And can I tell you why it was different? Because I was laughing.
Yeah, please.
Because it's so out of the ordinary for you to actually like pause for a moment and do a countdown before you do the intro instead of just stopping mid-sentence and going, welcome to Podpodcastcast, that it was so funny to me and it caught me off guard.
It's also funny to me because me doing the countdown made me feel less prepared to hop in.
Yeah.
But it's good. I also hope that was a good intro. Just me screaming at you. I hope the new listeners are excited. Yeah, hello. It's Podpodcastcast. We review other podcasts. And we're continuing our fall. I want to say our summer, but it's not really summer. You don't really have fall. Anyway, we're continuing our fall of not being together and Honor being in an Italian cafe.
Yeah. I'm still here.
You are still here. And we're excited about that. And we're also excited that, you know what else is here? Is spooky season.
Spooky season.
This is, I'm going to say officially our Halloween episode, although technically this is going to come out like 2 weeks before Halloween. But it's the closest episode that we have that's before Halloween.
Yeah, it's Price is Right rules, the Halloween episode.
That is exactly right. Yes,
I'm
Honor.
just Greg.
And so in this week's book club, this month's book club even.
Book Club, say it right.
Sorry. I've lost my stutter. I haven't been practicing. Our book club.
Yeah.
We are reviewing and talking about a podcast that, Honor, you like. We're very excited about.
Yep.
Called Just Roll With It.
Just Roll With It. Blood in the Bayou, specifically.
Yeah, okay. So let's, before you run and flee, listener, I know what you're thinking. Yes, this is a D&D podcast.
Yeah.
It's a D&D podcast. That's why we have to have the colon, because it's a specific season, a specific story of this D&D podcast.
Okay, but also, I have to say as early as possible, because I know you're going to go, it's a D&D podcast. But the campaign we're talking about is not D&D. They don't always play D&D.
Yeah, but I yes, that is true. So D&D nerds, listen up, prick your ears. Everyone else, what we're about to say does
Notice
not
how
matter.
you said D&D nerds. You mean
Dude,
tabletop
you know
RPG
what I mean.
nerds?
Yeah, okay. I don't think, yes.
You're so D&D centric.
I am, because that, dude, that's the hobby. I'm sorry. And also to everyone else that's not in this nerd hobby that you and me are in, they're not going to know what we're talking about.
But the people who are going to appreciate that we're correct. I will appreciate that we're correct. And you're the only person who's like, it's all D&D.
Pod heads? Put it in the comments, okay? If you're on Spotify right now, type in the comments. Do you think that it's fine to call all tabletop RPG games? Well, I guess that's redundant. Anyway, all tabletop RPGs Dungeons and Dragons?
It's not.
Or is it very important?
Or are you correct?
Okay, so listener, what we're talking about is that Dungeons and Dragons is a tabletop role-playing game where people sit around a table and they roll dice and tell stories together. And we're talking about another tabletop role-playing game called Call of Cthulhu. That's the particular game that this podcast is about. People are sitting around the table. I guess these guys are actually on like a Zoom call or whatever.
They did both.
Whoa. And they're playing the game and they're recording it for you. Call of Cthulhu is, I don't know, I would probably say it's the second biggest tabletop RPG in my mind. It's
Yeah.
probably if I was to think of another one that wasn't Dungeons and Dragons, I guess besides Pathfinder, which is also it's just Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, I was gonna say Pathfinder. Well, it's based on originally an older version of Dungeons and Dragons, which is why it's so similar, but then it's branched off from that point to have some pretty clear distinctions.
True. If we go any deeper, we have to start a separate podcast.
Okay, but this is awesome.
All right, let's start a separate podcast. We should do a D&D podcast.
That'd be awesome.
Listener, put in the comments, email in, sound off, let us know. Would you listen to us but more and geekier?
Yeah. Can you get nerdier than a podcast about podcasts?
Yeah. I think that's really our dynamic is you're like, Sam, let's get nerdy. And I'm like, Honor, we can't go further in this pit. And you're like, let's do it. You're kind of, pushing me off the edge.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's a digression. Call of Cthulhu is a game that's about horror. The name being a reference to H.P. Lovecraft's short story, I think it's called Call of Cthulhu. And so Call of Cthulhu is a game where people tell horror stories together. I think you can do other stuff with it, but that's really what it's geared for. It's geared for the supernatural, the scary, the spooky. And so that's why this podcast season, Just Roll With It, Blood in the Bayou, which is a recording of a game of Call of Cthulhu, is so fitting for our Halloween episode.
Yeah.
So, Honor, have you reviewed Just Roll With It before on Podpodcastcast? I cannot recall.
So I have not. Technically speaking, acute listeners will take note that last episode I reviewed a different campaign from Just Roll With It. So technically I have covered that, but I haven't reviewed their main campaign because I'm still waiting to see if I can convince you to listen to it or part of it or something, because it is my favorite podcast, probably. Definitely one of my favorites. But no, I have not reviewed the big Just Roll With It or Just Roll With It as a whole, because I also tried to be fairly vague about the podcast as a whole in my episode last week, because I was just focusing on that one campaign, and I knew we'd be talking about it this episode.
True. So it's a lot of D&D, a lot of Just Roll With It. So buckle up, listener.
Buckle up. But yeah, it's definitely one of my favorite shows, and I've at the very least referenced it several times over our whole show.
So let's kind of set the background of the podcast a little bit. It is a podcast by 4 dudes, correct, Honor?
Yes.
And they're all YouTube guys, YouTuber or live stream guys. And their names are Charlie Slimesicle. Is there more to Grizzly and Bisley? Because that's what they're always just referenced on the podcast. I don't know.
I can definitely give an introduction. So they are Charlie Slimesicle, who's probably the most well-known in the YouTube sphere. He's a pretty big name in sort of the corner he's in of gaming. He
was on, I think, one of the first podcasts that we ever reviewed, which was Chuckle Sandwich. He was a member of the Chuckle Sandwich.
He does a lot of things. So his name's in a lot of places. Condifiction, or they call him Condi, is another YouTuber, streamer who's on the show. Bisley, or Bisley Channel, is his whole name of his YouTube channel. He does game commentary stuff. He's on some live streams sometimes. And Grizzly Plays does gaming, some speedrunning stuff. They're all in very similar spheres.
I don't know anything about that element of these guys except Charlie Slimesicle, who I knew in advance.
Yeah.
And I'd listened to for the Chuckle Sandwich podcast. So I don't know which one is which. Well, I mostly know them by their character names for this podcast.
Yeah.
So this podcast, Blood in the Bayou, is a Patreon exclusive. Honor had access to the Patreon, so we listened to the Patreon exclusive content.
Yeah.
Because as I recall, they have on their public feed, Honor, is this right? Their very long-running Dungeons and Dragons campaign, and then on their Patreon, they've done smaller other things, and they'll release just like the first episode of these smaller campaigns on the main feed. Is that right?
Yes and no. So they have their main campaign that was running for a long time on their free YouTube channel and whatever podcast app you want to use. Riptide, which is my favorite campaign. I love it. But that's been on hiatus for a while. So then they did Wanderlust, the campaign that I reviewed in the last episode, which was slightly shorter, but still it was like a full campaign, 30-ish episodes. That was also public, and then I believe they've been doing another campaign recently. I believe it's called Total Monster Kill, something like that. And they've been putting that out publicly, and they'll do those kind of shorter campaigns and put out episodes publicly sometimes. And then, yes, you're right, they'll do other campaigns on their Patreon specifically. They did have a really long campaign running on their Patreon for a while that actually they did 2 very long seasons of, if I recall correctly, which Bisley was the DM for, because Grizzly usually DMs on the main campaign, which not confusing at all to have Bisley and Grizzly.
No, not at all. And I don't know which is which.
Yeah, but they had a superhero campaign running for a long time, which notably was not a Dungeons and Dragons campaign. I don't remember what the system is called, but I've heard it several times before. It is a superhero specific system that they were playing with. So, even though their tagline is a ridiculously powerful D&D podcast, they're not just doing D&D. It's not even like, oh, just for our Halloween campaign, we're doing Call of Cthulhu like they did for Blood in the Bayou. They do a lot of different things. And then, yeah, they have several other shorter campaigns that they've done, and then they'll put the first episode out publicly, or sometimes it's like the first 5 or 10 episodes or something.
Yeah, so that's kind of the background for this podcast, and so we're listening to one of those Patreon exclusives. So there's going to also be a little angle of this review, which is like, is it worth your money to go pay for the Patreon and listen to this podcast? Because it's not a free podcast.
No.
You can listen to the first episode for free.
Yes.
But you cannot listen to the whole thing for free. So just be aware of that as we talk about it.
Yeah.
I assume all the people that like normal podcasts have left at this point. So we really are just talking to the D&D fans.
That's the point.
That's the people that Otter is always talking to.
Yeah.
If there's anyone else here, she's like, oh, I guess.
Suppose.
But let's talk to the guys. Let's talk to the guys that love a D12. That's my favorite dice.
That's also mine.
Whoa, because it's like kind of spherical, right? It's kind of fun. It's not so pointy as the D20.
It's a nice shape. It's nice to roll around. It's still got distinct sides that you can feel with your little fingers, but it's not like weird like a D4.
Yeah. And listener, if you want to know more of our favorite dice,
I could do I could do an in-depth review of my favorite dice and why.
It was honestly maybe very dangerous for me to suggest that you start a D&D podcast.
Absolutely. Don't you know I have a dice collection?
Dude, I know. It's frightening. Because even if I don't want to start a D&D podcast, I might lose you. You might be like, sorry, dog.
Yeah, bye.
I'm just going to read the player's handbook.
Oh, and I would.
You would. You'd have a great time. Okay, so that's kind of the background. This is another D&D podcast. I think it's, I don't know, I think it's fairly well known in the space. It's interesting to me that it's a little more Patreon oriented. It's kind of a different monetization approach than other D&D podcasts.
Yeah.
And I kind of suspect that a little bit because they're not trying to compete on the same level as the really big D&D podcasts. I think it's more of we are internet guys and we've made another product for our big fans and they're going to listen to it and enjoy it. And if there are big fans, they're going to be willing to pay.
Yeah.
I think it's probably the angle there.
I don't know. I don't think it's as much like, oh, we're internet guys and this is just like another thing we're doing. I do know this is a project and a show that they care a lot about. And so part of why they slowly have leaned to doing more and more Patreon stuff is because they do want to produce stuff really well. Like, they like commissioning artists to draw their characters and stuff. They like being able to have more editors on projects and pay them. And I do think one thing that's important to note is that they still have so much content that is completely free. Like, yes, we're talking about something that's strictly behind a paywall for this episode, but just roll with it as a whole. There's hundreds of hours that you can go listen to without paying a cent.
Yeah. I just think it's a kind of an interesting, and again, this is just kind of a little bit off of your descriptions. It's an interesting monetization scheme to me.
Yeah.
So let's actually dive in and talk about what this podcast is.
Yes.
So Blood in the Bayou is a Call of Cthulhu podcast, which is DM'd, or I guess in Call of Cthulhu, the guy who runs the game is called the Keeper.
Yes.
So it's GM'd by Charlie Slimesicle. and then the other 3 play. And so the setting, well, I think we can kind of briefly go over this story.
Mm-hmm. It's also only 4 episodes long, which is pretty short for
Okay.
a actual play.
If you're going to say only 4 episodes, I will say each of those episodes is like 3 hours long.
That's regular.
That's regular for you.
That's regular for D&D podcasts.
I just want to put that out there as a disclaimer for I don't want any innocent, naive podcast listener to be like walking through the podcast woods and be like, "Oh, la-di-da-di-da, a simple little podcast. I'll put it in my mouth and chew it in but a moment." And they're there for the rest of their lives until they're old and gray.
If 4 episodes is the rest of your life, I'm sorry.
That is sad.
Yeah.
But I want to throw that out. Anyway, so the premise of the podcast is that the 3 main characters, which are portrayed by our players, Roland Deep, Timothy Rand, and Keenan Stone. So
you keep saying Keenan Stone, and that's not his name.
It's Keenan Stone.
Kian.
It's Kian?
Yes.
Well, whatever.
Kian.
K-I-S is higher truth. The 3 main characters, so Roland, Rand, Kian, are coming back to their hometown of Galloway, Louisiana, in the swamp, and they're all going to meet up, and they're going to play D&D. It's like 10 years after they graduated high school, and they're going to hang out, and they haven't seen each other in a long, long time. They used to be best buddies, but things start going awry. Things start getting very spooky.
Yeah, because also part of why they're all getting back together is because Roland is there for his parents' funeral.
Yes, a morbid occasion, right?
Yeah.
But they're going to hang out before they do that, but what gets in the way of them hanging out is that they see one of their other friends, and he's like been horribly disfigured. He's been turned
to mush.
He's been turned to mush, goopy person mush. And they're like, this is freaky. There's birds falling out of the sky. Things are getting freaky, scary here. They try to escape town, but they can't get out because there's a force field. Very horror movie. It reminds me of that one movie, I think, is it Cabin in the Woods? In which the people are literally trapped in the horror sequence by a force field.
Yep.
Then they kind of start trying to figure out, oh, dude, there's all these spooky things. What's going on? We're trying to figure it out. They're investigating a little bit, and things get progressively more spooky and crazier until the whole town of Galloway is engulfed in this horror movie nightmare in which people are being replaced by doppelganger lookalikes that are actually monsters. And all these doppelganger lookalikes start to just go around town, killing people, spreading gore and viscera all over the town, doing this crazy stuff. They're a freaky bug-like hive mind. We have some big reveals, such as Roland was actually a bug person doppelganger the whole time. Yeah. Also, Keenan died because he tried to make out with his ex-girlfriend, but his ex-girlfriend was a it was like a whole thing. But then they resurrect him with the power of dark magic.
Yeah, it was also they did not realize he died for a little bit because Charlie had them just keep playing like something else had happened, and then he was like, so actually when you kissed, no, you died immediately. And that was all fake.
Yeah. And then in the climactic battle, all the 3 guys go in deep into the swamp, and they find this gargantuan alien horror that has been living there and slowly picking people off one by one and replacing it with its little spawn. And is planning to take over the world and be evil. And 2 of our heroes, Roland and Keenan, heroically die. Keenan.
It's going to keep happening.
It's going to keep happening. While our biggest, bestest boy, Rand, chucks in a couple grenades into the monster, destroys it, and the town is saved, and everybody that it killed is, I guess, kind of back. That's kind of unclear. The story ends with Rand meeting his kid sister that had died a long time ago, and that the monster had took. And so, anyway, so you assume everything worked out well, and it was fine in the end. And that's it.
It's like definitely some of them died, but some of them were in the blood in the bayou. And so it's like maybe they're preserved and came back. Some of them did.
Yeah. Anna, you were going to say something as I was talking.
I was just going to say that I do think it's notable that the big bad kind of is using the face of Rachel Rand, Timothy Rand's kid
Right.
sister, who, like you said, had died, and that's sort of a recurring thing through the whole podcast. Is there's these things that happened in their past that they're like, oh, yeah, she was taken by the bugs.
Yeah, so let's kind of dive into some of our thoughts on this, because I don't think we need to recapitulate the whole story, but I think there's a lot, because I woke up early this morning to finish listening to this podcast. I was rolling.
I woke up at a regular time to finish listening to this podcast.
Well, you'd already listened to it before, right? No, I thought this was like a podcast that you had listened to before and really liked.
Nope.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this was not one that I'd listened to. I'd listened to part of the first episode because that one was free when I didn't have access to the Patreon. But this is one of their campaigns that I had heard about a lot that people really liked. And especially being a fan of horror, people had told me before, you should check out Blood of the Bayou because I know you like Just Roll With It and it's good. And so now I have checked it out.
Yeah. So we're both very fresh. So we're going to kind of, I think this is almost going to be, I want to say first impressions, but can you say first impressions after you've listened to something for 12 hours? I'm not exactly sure.
Also, I definitely, if nothing else, like I already know the show and the people on it, so I definitely have a different interpretation. I have different, it's not my first impression. I know them.
Yeah.
I know these
I'm
boys.
just saying these are kind of our off the cuff feelings is what I was going to say. But so
yeah,
let's talk about it. I want to jump on to what you just said. So there's these things that are set up in the player's past that, that come up because it's, you're visiting your hometown. There's a lot of memories there. And we're trying to tell a story. This is kind of, this is an archetype, right?
Yeah.
What is it like to go home and that kind of stuff. And so there's several of these things. I think each character has a few. So the big one is that Rand, Timothy Rand, they all call him by his last name, Rand, his sister, Rachel, kid sister Rachel, went missing when she was like 14. And this was like a big thing in the family, right? Obviously very traumatic. And you get like kind of immediately that he feels like he bears a lot of guilt for that. And so that it's very trippy when, there's the introduction of this monster, and this monster inhabits the body of Rachel Rand. It's like, he's
because they see her at some point in the end of the first episode, and they're like, that can't be her because she's dead.
Right. Then Roland has some background stuff.
His name's also Roland, so you keep
Roland. Roland is a name. Roland is a name.
But his name is Roland.
Roland, whatever. I'll butcher these names how I want to. Gosh darn it.
Yeah, pick a way to butcher Ram.
Anyway, so cool. So Roland, his like background thing is that 1, he's coming back because his parents have died. He's coming to the funeral. 2, he suffered a trauma as a child where he saw these bodies in a lake, like dead bodies, and it was freaky. And he went to like tell other people, and then no one else, like they went there and they're like, there's nothing here. And he's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And then I don't know that Kian has anything. Kian is a rock star. Kian's a rock star. Roland's a lawyer, and Rand's a pothead, right? Oh, this is also all in the 80s. That's a side note, not very important. But
yeah, I felt like we should give a quick synopsis of the characters. It's all in the 80s. Kian Stone is the like pretty boy, heart stopper rock star who's been off in Hollywood for the past 10 years. He also always introduces himself as 25. He's not 25, but he says he is. Yeah, Rand is the guy who never got out of town. He's a pothead. He's kind of a loser, at least in the eyes of society. And then Roland is like, oh, you actually got out there. You're a lawyer. He's the responsible, level-headed one who doesn't do drugs all the time, etc.
Yeah, and so they kind of try to add dimension to these characters by giving them these like backstory stuff. And so Kian's is that he went to Hollywood to be a rock star, but his high school girlfriend who was supposed to meet him there never met him there. And so he has to like resolve that. So I wanted to establish those so we could talk about it. I think the backstory stuff that these issues that are like related to the hometown that they bring up, to me, I don't. It's not that they didn't go anywhere, but they did feel like they were kind of tacked on. Does that make sense? Like, I like. I know that they're trying to develop it like, this was really important to you, Rand, that your like sister went away. But like it doesn't really feel that way, you know what I mean? Because like we find that out and it's like, oh yeah, well, I guess that's bad. Oh yeah, there she is. Okay. And then the characters are also trying to play off of these moments that are supposed to be in their background, but it feels strange and stiff, right? Because they're expositing, like they're telling you what happened, and they're like trying to convey an emotion with it. And also they have to do this improvised, right? So there's no point in a script when they have to be like, okay, now we talk about this thing. So like Rand talks about his missing sister several times throughout the I want to say movie, several times throughout the show, in which he's like, man, I've got a lot of guilt about this, right? Because he was supposed to like be watching her or something like that, but he didn't do it. He went to a party. This is the story. And so, like several times he like tries to have a scene about it, but it feels weird because those scenes I feel like frequently are like, okay, and we have to move on because there's a monster, and it's just like it doesn't. It feels improvised. You know what I mean? It feels like, okay, I get that you're trying to develop this, but it feels kind of choppy, right? Because you are just like doing several different scenes where you're like, I'm trying to make this happen. I'm trying to make this dramatic moment, which doesn't happen if this was like a movie, right? Which is just like the character just doesn't have to start and stop these feelings.
Yeah, I suppose. I don't think I feel that as much as you do, but definitely, there was definitely one scene where two characters cross paths and Charlie as the GM was like, okay, do you like have a moment here or keep moving? And one of them was like, well, I don't think my character would say anything because he feels really bad. And the other one was like, I don't think my character would either. And Charlie was like, great, you keep walking.
Right.
So those moments definitely happened because of the nature of improv and whatnot. I don't think I felt as much like stuff was stilted in a way that it seems like you did, as I felt like there definitely was a part of the characters that was pretty explicit and clear where they're, three guys in the 80s who are not really going to want to talk about their feelings super openly, and they're not super inclined to just have these open moments and talk about these things, which felt authentic to me. And also, I think there were moments where I was like, I kind of wish for me that they'd explained a thing more explicitly, but I also felt like it made sense in a not feeling super canned purpose to like leave some stuff up more for like, okay, so something bad happened to Rand's sister. You don't need him to sit down and spell out what happened right in this moment. You can wait and find out more details later.
Yeah.
I think that is something that happens a lot in horror stuff, especially when it's like, oh, something's wrong, but you'll find out what exactly later. I felt like it went along with that.
Right.
So I wasn't super mad about it, even though I do think there were parts where it maybe was a little clumsy, but I felt like it wasn't the worst.
No,
I liked it for the most part.
I don't think it was the worst either, but I think it's kind of just worth noting that, as a story, it does kind of, for me, have that choppy moment, like where you're talking about, okay, they set it up early, right? They're taking some key storytelling like concepts, like, but so they see Rachel Rand and you're like, what does that mean to me? Or I guess they mentioned it one time before that, like, oh, my sister disappeared, and then you're like, oh, Rachel Rand, that's the spooky person we just saw. It must be his sister.
Yeah. But I felt like that moment when they saw her in a lot of ways was the reveal, because Charlie went, and Rand, you see your sister who is dead.
Yeah. Right.
Like, he says that out loud. So then you're like, oh, okay,
right.
I understand exactly the emotional weight of this moment.
Yeah, you get it. But there's also points where, like, I think there's like 3 separate times later, where Rand's like, oh, man, it should have been me. It should have been me. And it's like, yeah, we kind of get it. Like, you thought your character was going to die earlier in the story, so you wanted to have this climactic final moment where you're like, it should have been me. But that happens like 3 times, and so it's like, okay, like I get it. It's like because this isn't like a fully formed movie and it's improv, you want to have this cool moment, but it felt like we went off a little early, and so it becomes a little less interesting, right?
I suppose.
I feel kind of a little similarly about Roland's reveal that like, oh man, I had this traumatic incident where I saw all these dead bodies. It's mentioned like once, and then it's very important later when it's like you saw that you had this traumatic incident, you saw these dead bodies, but that's because you were one of the monsters the whole time, and one of the dead bodies you saw was the original version of you that you killed to replace. What? That's crazy, right?
Yeah, I feel like if anything, that one made more sense to me. Definitely the stuff with Rachel was a little choppy, especially because there was like not quite explaining everything that happened with her until quite a bit later. The stuff with Roland I felt like worked a lot better because Charlie even says at one point that he was breadcrumbing a lot of stuff that then Condi, the person who plays Roland, like in the reveal is like, wait, you literally said to me that my heartbeat matches their heartbeats. And Charlie's like, yeah, dude.
Yes.
I've been telling you. So I felt like that one was set up a lot better. I really liked that reveal and the connection to his past because there also was this recurring thing where like the tree house that he went to after that event became important during the campaign.
Yeah.
So I felt like that one worked better because there was more moments throughout the thing that were being set up.
Yeah, so I think that's also something good to note is that I think Charlie Slimesicle, I feel so silly calling him Charlie Slimesicle, but whatever.
That's his legal name.
Old Chucky Goo, as we call him. Charlie, I think, did a good job and a really interesting job as the game manager to set up the horror elements and the mystery elements of this show, right? Because Dungeons and Dragons, the tabletop role playing genre as a whole, horror is not like its focus, right?
Yeah.
Tabletop role playing games, a lot of it is focused on, casting spells and the
fantasy and adventure.
Right. You're fighting dudes. It's kind of a power fantasy, right? You're this, super awesome character, and you get to do super awesome stuff. And while definitely people like play horror, right? They like to be like, okay, how can I and my friends be in a horror movie? It's not the focus. So I think that Charlie did a really good job in putting together and setting up this mystery and this horror, which is, I don't want to say uncommon, but not super common for the format, for the medium of this game. And also, I think fairly difficult to do, right? Because one of the things is, it's not like a horror movie, right? Where there's stuff in front of you to look at. And it's not even like a horror podcast or something where there's like a cohesive world and like there's spooky effects, right? Like the Magnus archives that we reviewed. No, it's not like that. It's you're sitting around your group of friends, you're looking at them in the eyes, and you're trying to put on a spooky voice and tell them things that are scary.
Yeah.
And then they have to also play along. And that's like not easy to do. I mean, I think as a testament to that in this podcast, there's a lot of moments when things are supposed to be very dire, very scary, but there's a lot of laughing going on, right? Because you're with your friends, and so you're like, my town is being taken over by these horrible monsters, and and one of the characters is like, well, at least if I go down, I can smoke with the devil. It's like, you're trying to make your buddies laugh and you're trying to have a good time. And so I think there's kind of a natural push just socially to not have it be scary or spooky, but I think Charlie did a really good job of planning a lot of things out in advance and setting all these things up so it feels like a movie, so it feels like a story that the characters are in, which really invests the players. And because a lot of the mechanics in Call of Cthulhu, this is its focus. It's not a power fantasy game. Your character could die easily.
You're fragile.
It's supposed to be realistic. You're not going around fighting everybody. You're not earning XP. It's not like that. So I think Charlie used that well and the game well to build a horror atmosphere, which I think is worth noting.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think Charlie's GMing is one of the highlights of this campaign for me because he does really embrace that horror aspect in a way that You can just tell he put a lot of work into trying to set this up, which is super difficult. It's like if you're just telling spooky stories around the fire, but you gotta make it up and for longer, and there's a game, and your friends are also telling you what's
Right.
happening.
You have to involve your friends in it, right? And so
Yeah.
if your friends want to pull it in a goofy direction and you want to maintain the momentum, right? You can't just be like, no, no, you can't.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, which also Charlie's a super goofy guy when he wants to be. So he definitely lets his players and friends make these jokes. But I think there's one moment that I remember where they're talking about, like, oh, this is what my character would do. And he talks about, you guys get to have these cool characters, and my character is the harsh reality of this world and the eldritch horror you're facing. So I'm going to be doing that. And I think just generally, he sticks to the rules in a way that doesn't feel like rules lawyery and unfun, but is like, no, yeah, you guys are joking about getting advantage for doing this bit. I'm not going to give that to you. You still might die. Which I think really helped keep this on the tracks, because these are a set of guys that are used to being funny, and Charlie was there to really help ground them and keep the spooky elements there that otherwise I think really could have gone out the window.
Yeah, I want to talk about how funny these guys are in a second, but before that, did you listen to the Talkback show where they record a separate episode being like, these are all the things we were thinking during the show, and this is all the stuff I had planned?
Did not.
Okay. I didn't either.
Yeah, I want to, but I did not.
Because I think, one of the things that's interesting about this is that there's this big mystery, right? You're trying to figure out after you realize that spooky things are going on, you're trying to understand why, and so and the characters are too, and so Charlie is, trying to drip feed you information like you do in a movie or a book, and be like, these are the things that are happening. Build suspense. You're learning more, but you're also you can't reveal it all at once because then it's not spooky.
Yeah,
and so I think it's really interesting the stuff that he had planned to slowly reveal. And, like the Roland bit, right? Roland is being told all these things that you realize in the end, like, oh my gosh, those were all clues. Those were all clues to how this thing was supposed to be, that he was secretly a monster the whole time. So I think that's really interesting. And if you like to play D&D in your spare time, this could be something cool to model off of and try to understand, like, oh, what's a good way to make a mystery and communicate that to the people I'm playing with.
Absolutely.
I also think one of the things that's, well, I don't even know exactly how I feel about it, but several times throughout this show, throughout this story, one of the players will like come up with a theory, right? As characters are doing all the time in a horror movie. And he's coming up with a theory and he's like, boom, I think, this is the theory. This is what I think is going on. And sometimes they become progressively more convinced of this. And then it's wrong, which feels really weird because that doesn't happen in a different medium, right? That doesn't happen in a story that's written by, or that's written down, like written by one person or more. Like if you have a screenplay written by 40 people, it's going to be cohesive.
I mean, I don't know. You ever heard of a red herring?
Yeah, right. But like if a character develops a theory, it's either right or there's like a reason that it's wrong, and there's like a gratifying reveal later, and you're like, oh no, it wasn't the maid, it was the colonel the whole time. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Right? That doesn't happen. You know? So
I suppose. I'm just assuming you're talking about the main one, which is Rand has this theory that the whole town is a brain, because Charlie even has a map drawn of the town and is like, the shape of the town is important. And so Rand thinks the town is a brain for so long. And then Charlie's like, you realize it's not a brain, it's a hive.
Yeah.
And I thought that was fun and cool. Because also I think it helps that specifically Rand's character is a conspiracy theorist. If that hadn't been in play, I think it would have felt more like, well, okay, that sucks. But that was funny to me because he is a conspiracy theorist.
Yes. Well, so I think that's interesting, right? So there's this, Rand is trying to do research, and Charlie tells him, hey, you see something in one of your D&D books, a mind flayer. There's this alien, and it sucks people's minds, and if it hasn't like eaten their brain, it like controls them with mind powers. And so at the start of this, you're thinking, okay, are these mind flayers? They don't really act like mind flayers. And so the characters are like trying to understand that. Yeah, there's this really interesting, like Charlie shows him the map and he's like, oh my God, it looks like a brain. And it's later revealed it's not a brain, dude. And he's like, it looks just like a brain.
It's a hive.
So that's interesting, but it isn't. That I think is one of the better examples, right? Because there is somewhat of a reveal where like Charlie just looks at him and tells him, no, that's not right.
Yeah.
You know, and so there is somewhat of a reveal there, and you're like, oh, okay. But it's not like in universe, right? Like the character doesn't realize that. Instead, like the player realizes that.
I mean, he did.
I think Charlie just tells him. He just says, hey, man, this is how it is.
Yes, but also that's the point at which Rand stops being like, oh, this is a brain, and is when he's like, they're turning everyone into bees.
Yeah, but they're also not.
It's the same.
It doesn't have the same payoff.
I'm just saying it's the same as the player learning it was the character learning it in that moment.
Sure, but there's no reason that the character learns it. You know what I mean? Yes, the character's like, okay, these are more insect guys. They're like a hive mind kind of thing, and it's not quite the elder brain thing.
That's the reason.
Yeah, but
that he realized.
Yeah.
Because there was something that happened in the campaign that made, like, a choice a character made for Charlie then to be like, you realize it's not a brain, it's a hive. It's not like Charlie just told him out of nowhere. That's when the characters realized it.
Sure. I don't think it was. I mean, maybe I should re-listen to it, but as I recall, I don't think it was like. It didn't feel like a big reveal to me. You know, it didn't feel like earned in universe. It was like instead, it was just like you've been handed down this knowledge, right? And that red herring didn't like serve a separate purpose. You know, it was just like, oh, you were just wrong.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot of smaller instances of that where Rand's character is like, is it this? And then Charlie just has to go, no, it's not.
Yeah.
You know?
Sometimes you're just wrong.
Yeah. And so that's like another, I think, angle of it being an improv.
I think that feels more like because you're right, it is definitely, in some ways they're trying to emulate like a horror movie or something, but you can't do that when it's a different medium. So to me, that feels more like the sitting around a campfire telling a spooky story, and then one of the people you're telling it to maybe goes, is this about to happen? And you go, no, listen.
Yeah.
And then you keep going.
Which does undercut some of the tension a little bit when someone goes, oh, I got it. And then they're like, what do you think it is? And then the answer is no. And then you're like, okay, well, what's the, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Though, you're entirely correct, and I agree with you. I just remembered that there is a part where then Charlie takes this pattern that's popped up in his players, and he puts it into a mechanic where he's like, if you correctly guess what the face is, because Roland always knew that he saw this face in the Bayou, but he couldn't quite place who it was,
during
and they had different theories.
Traumatic event, like you saw all these bodies.
Yes, and so then there's sort of this like flashback moment almost where Roland's trying to figure out whose face he saw, and there's sanity rolls involved in Call of Cthulhu, right, and that sort of thing. And so Charlie's like, who do you think it is at this point? And he says outright afterward, he guesses correctly, so he gets to make the sanity roll or whatever with advantage. Yeah. He's like, if you'd guessed incorrectly, I would have given you disadvantage.
Sure. Yeah.
And I thought that was cool.
It isn't.
Because it very much seemed like a moment of seeing a pattern pop up in his players and then making that part of the game in a way that was really fun to me.
Well, I wonder, I honestly thought he had that plan from the beginning. It was very smooth and very...
He definitely could have.
Yeah. Or maybe he was adapting because they were doing all this kind of guessing as the game goes on. Yeah, I know. I also thought that was very interesting. And that felt very good because Roland's player guesses correctly, right? The player and the character come to understand, oh, I am a monster, but I don't know that, you know?
Yeah.
And so that feels much more like a mystery or horror story that you're used to, where it's like, you know, zoom in, right? The character has this huge realization, right? And so you, the audience member, also get that. But because it's not an audio drama, because it's not a play, because it's not scripted, there's not a lot of moments like that. Or they're not all like that, you know? There's a lot of them where it's like, you know?
Yeah. There's definitely moments that are just wrong.
Which is fun as a player, right? It's fun as a player to like, guess it, because that's what you want to do as an audience member in a horror movie, right? And that's what we want to do as an audience member listening to the show, except we're not playing the game. Like, we can't do that. So it, feels like the actor in the movie interjecting to be like, and you're like, okay, well, I'm also guessing.
Yeah.
But then, the tension's been undercut there.
Definitely.
But I do want to talk about the cast of guys, our 4 boys.
Yes.
Charlie, Condi, Grizzly, and Bisley, which truly does feel like a crew of YouTubers, you know what I mean? Like, if I said this to someone who isn't on YouTube, doesn't know these guys, they would be like, yeah, those sound like little internet men. I believe you,
Yeah, that's a username.
Yeah. They're funny. They're quite funny together.
They're really funny.
Enjoyable to listen to them to make bits and laugh together.
Yeah.
There's so many good bits in this show, and especially the 3 players, right? Like, all 4 of them work really well together, but the 3 players, they just bounce off of each other so well, and they all really like the setting, because it becomes less important throughout the story that it's set in the 80s, but at the start of the story, I think it's important in like tabletop role-playing games a lot of times to have a setting that players understand, and so having a setting that lets them rely on tropes, to get comfortable and to easily integrate into. And so for this movie to start off kind of like a cheesy 80s movie, I think is perfect for these guys, and that's what they're playing off of the whole time. They're like Kian, who's the rock star, he's like, hey man, how we doing, bro? Dude, totally ripping, man.
He's always saying like bogus and
bogus, dude.
Bro.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really glad to hear you say that, because even in this campaign, they're honestly like holding back on some of the comedy stuff, because like in their other campaigns and stuff, there are truly some of the funniest moments I've ever encountered in media. Like, some of my favorite bits. So funny, just like can't stop crying, laughing type of moments. And there aren't as like really any to that level in this campaign, but they are funny. So if you like their dynamic and them being funny in Blood in the Bayou, you'll love any of their other stuff. These 4 guys have been doing this for so many years, and they're really close friends. They recorded this entire campaign, I'm pretty sure, in Charlie's basement, which also they don't all live in the same place, so they like flew to hang out together because they were like, I want to, record this Halloween special with my bros that I make my D&D podcast with, and they just have a great dynamic. Yeah. You're so correct. They bounce off each other so well.
They do so well. It fits in with their characters, and it fits in with their setting very well. Well, the 80s setting, not really the horror setting. You're right. It does feel like they're holding back, and they're kind of obviously doing so that it can be a horror show, because it can't. You can't have comedy and horror in the exact same moment, right? You can have them separated by a little bit of time, but they can't be, or sustained, right? You can have, maybe a funny jump scare, but it can't be sustained as you go through a whole show like this, especially 12 hours. So it's definitely clear that they're holding themselves back, and also Charlie's trying to figure out how to manage that, right? In the start of the show, I think he even makes a comment. He's like, this is very goofy. We're rolling with it, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm going to figure out how to make this goofy thing also suspenseful, and I know you guys are doing, you kind of mentioned this earlier a little bit, Honor. I know you guys are doing a funny bit that I'm not going to acknowledge it. That's not part of the story.
Yeah, no.
There's a scary thing happening right now, and you need to figure out how to solve it or get away or whatever. Yeah, I think these guys really are tremendously funny together. They're, sometimes this is not a audio drama, right? It's something that I think people really need to understand, right? I think people that want to listen to an audio drama when listening to a D&D podcast, one of the things that will bother them is that the actors are just chatting with each other sometimes. And so they're doing funny bits as they're chatting to the side, and not a whole lot of funny bits as their characters. Some, they're sometimes doing like, hey, Roland, man, eat this mushroom. And then Roland's like, dude, I'm tripping out. It's like, it was a normal mushroom, bro. Uncool. So
Righteous. That's the word I was trying to think of earlier. Totally righteous.
That makes sense. Honor, you could be a tremendous Ninja Turtle. You would be very righteous
Thank
indeed.
you. That's all I want to be.
I know. That's why you're in Italy studying the classic Ninja Turtle.
Pizza.
I was thinking like Michelangelo, Leonardo.
Also that.
Yeah, I think these guys are really, really funny. I don't want to oversell them. They're pretty funny. They have some really.
I think they're extremely funny.
I think they're.
Like I said, I think they're extremely funny because I know even in this one where they aren't as funny, they're holding back. So I know they're extremely funny.
I think it would be interesting to listen to these guys in more of a fitting, giggly context.
Yeah. I also just want to point out that we're just saying they're very funny people. They want to add these bits in and sometimes have to be reined in. They do also love the drama aspect of this, which I think is the thing that surprises people more because they're like, oh, these are funny YouTube guys. Of course they're going to make funny bits. But they also are people who really care about storytelling and their characters, and they get really invested in these stories that they're making together in a way that I think would be unexpected to some people. Like, Just Roll With It is a show in particular where I've noticed they have this tendency to, in moments, be like, I think this is enough of a character thing for my character that I should have disadvantage on this roll. Or I'm gonna roll to see if I'm maybe not brave enough or ready enough to, like, encounter this thing, and I'm gonna try to run away. Whatever the thing is. And that's not necessarily a thing you see everyone doing because they'll be trying to optimize their D&D play.
Right.
And I think these guys also care about the drama and the characters in a way that I really love. And like I said, I think would surprise people if it's not pointed out.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. And I think that if you knew them from some other context and just thought of them as funny and then you saw them in this like horror show, you might be like, oh, whoa, that's a different setting.
Mm-hmm.
They are funny in this, but they're also not like stifled. You know what I mean? When we say that they're holding back, they're not like bummed out, right? This is a show that they're making, and of course they're invested in the storytelling because they're trying to make a good product. They're trying to make a story that's interesting and fun, and the fun here is being spooked, right? And so it's not like normal D&D, which is always an important takeaway from people who are just getting into D&D, right? Is that whatever show you listen to is not like what you're going to play. Not that it's super different, but it's a different goal, right? Sometimes you're going to play with a guy who just, he just wants to kill goblins, or he just wants to be a private eye in Call of Cthulhu, right? And he's got his trusty revolver, and he's trying to play the game and not necessarily tell a story. And that's fine, but these people are trying to make a story for your entertainment. And so they're also trying to be like, okay, what fits with my character? What's the most entertaining thing? So Kian, the rock and roll character, he sees his high school girlfriend Becky when they see some of these monsters, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, Becky must be a monster." And then he's like, "I gotta know, man. I gotta know if she's one of them." And so he goes and meets up with her. Immediately loses the guy that's supposed to like cover him, who's supposed to like help him out if he gets in trouble. Immediately goes with Becky on a motorcycle, too in love, loses the guy. And then like Kian's player knows that the situation he is in is very bad. But he's like, what would Kian do if I was Kian? And Kian would kiss his ex-girlfriend. And that's how
he would kiss this babe.
Yeah. But the babe is a monster, and the babe kills him. I mean, what?
And then he dies.
Right? And so.
And then he gets turned to goo.
And if you were just playing on your own, right, with your friends in your mom's basement, you would be like, I'm not going to do that because I want to keep playing with my friends. I really don't want to die. And, Charlie, the GM, allows Keen to come back to get resurrected through this like dark magic thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he's doing that because we've got this actor here, right? And we've got this player who's not doing anything.
Yeah. Though also, he did tell Kian, if you do this thing, you'll learn one spell. And then that one spell is resurrection.
Right. Well, but also while that happened, I think he told Kian that is like, hey, I'll let you choose. I'll let you choose from the book.
Yeah.
But I don't know that Kian actually chose because Kian was dead. I think Charlie just went, we're going to do resurrection, right? So it's like,
I just want to say it wasn't completely out of the blue.
no, there's like a reason. Like,
Yeah.
I'm skipping over things, right, listener? Listener, if you want to know everything that happens, go listen.
True.
But so there's like reasons that happens, but it's also there's reasons outside the story why that happens that would be different, if you weren't making a show for your entertainment, or if you were just playing
absolutely.
by your, with your friends, you might just be like, well,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go home, guys, right?
Yeah, there is definitely a stint where Kian is completely dead and Grizzly, his player, is just there like making quips on the side because he's like not there.
Well, also Grizzly doesn't know, that Kian's gonna come back, and so Grizzly's just like, bro, what do I do? Like,
yeah, he does keep asking Charlie, what am I here for? Do you want me to play the monster? No? Okay. I'll just keep waiting.
I'm just hanging, bro. I'm just hanging out.
He's just hanging.
So, speaking of storytelling, we just kind of talked about the storytelling and how the players handle it, but I want to talk about how the story is told. And I think this is going to be our biggest point of divergence.
Okay, I'm ready.
The story suffers because it's a part of a tabletop RPG, right? It suffers because it's D&D. And what I mean by that is it's not told cohesively. Like, this is 12 hours for a horror movie. That's a really long horror movie. So, like, what happens? And what happens, one, is a lot of just people talking, right? Which we already established is, like, can be enjoyable. There's guys making bits, so that's cool. But also, there's a lot of, like, indecision. There's a lot of go here, oh, no, go back, go here, oh, this is a different thing. Like, I have a theory on how to deal with this. Oh, no, this theory's wrong. Like, now we're divided. The characters are in different places. We're going to cover everybody. It feels very, to me, zigzaggy, right? It feels like we're going back and forth because we don't have a direction. Like, we don't know where the movie's supposed to go. And obviously, that's the case, right? Because you're improvising a story between four people, right? And one guy has like a direction. Like, one guy knows this is what's going to happen. But the other three guys are like, I'm going to do this thing. Oh, this thing didn't work out. Well, maybe I need to do this other thing. So, like, an example to make this a little more concrete. So Rand splits up from Kian while Kian goes and talks to his monster girlfriend, right? And Rand is going to go do something. I already forgot what he wanted to do, but what ends up happening because of how, a tabletop RPG game works, there was some dice rolled, and Rand ends up lost in a swamp and meets this like policeman that they know is a monster, and then gets attacked by him and has to enter this fight. And so he like goes to the swamp and then immediately leaves and tries to escape this fight. And so it's like, okay, so that didn't actually go anywhere. You know what I mean? Like, that whole thing could be omitted from the story, and it doesn't change the story at all. And it doesn't like add any character depth, doesn't make anything more interesting, right? And there's like a bunch of cases like this, right? Where it's like, okay, Kian's dead. Now Roland and Rand are going to go do this thing to try to stop the monster. And then they find out, oh man, wait, Charlie just told us that there's a way we can revive Kian. So we're going to go literally back the way we just came and go back there to the place we just came from and then like do this revive thing. So like, the whole leaving and coming back wasn't really necessary. Like, I get that there was like a little minor reveal, but all the fighting and monster stuff that happened in between didn't really need to happen. And there's kind of a lot of that, right? There's a bunch of these different scenes which are not, that you just realize in hindsight, they didn't need to happen. And that's just an important, I think, distinction and thing to point out about it's a problem with the medium, right? And it's a problem with trying to tell a story via Dungeons and Dragons, trying to tell an improvised story, which is like, it's really hard. And especially when it's not like actual like stage improv, you know what I mean? Where you just say, okay, I'm going to go with whatever. Like, that one person has a plan and you're trying to fit to their plan and also like fit to the rules that you're given. So you kind of, there's this back and forth with a lot of things that feel unnecessary or redundant, and that like to the whole story, is not interesting, right? Of course, if you like the guys, you're like, that's fine, I can listen to them talk more. But if you're here for the story, it degrades the story because it's less cohesive.
Yeah. I think you're right. I will disagree.
Mm-hmm.
Because I do think, like, if you're going to listen to a tabletop RPG story, that's part of the experience. You know, you're not here because you want to watch a horror movie. Like, why would you be here? Or you're not here because you want a horror audio drama. Go listen to a horror audio drama. And especially, I think for me, it was never that it was like, oh, truly nothing of worth happened. Like that first example you said actually led to one of my favorite scenes in the whole show, where Rand goes off, he has this encounter, it leaves him really shaken, he's on 1 hit point, he's like dying, and he goes back to this bunker. He hears something come up to the door of the bunker and start knocking, and then it knocks in the pattern of like his favorite song, and he's super freaked out by this. He's like, that's really scary. I'm gonna get a shotgun and see if I can get out of here, shoot whatever is out there. He's like in this really panicky state because of the encounter he just had that really threw off his plan. Then, so Roland had gone off right before that to go to his parents' funeral, which none of the other two came to. So the other players weren't even there, which I think was a really smart choice on Charlie's part, because he was gone for this extended period of time, and in a setting where you're learning that, you know, monsters are replacing people that you know. Rand ends up opening the door, running outside. He shoots a shotgun at whatever is outside, and luckily ends up missing because it is Roland. But then it ends up being this thing where Rand is like, how do I know you're Roland? And ends up not trusting the answer Roland gives and runs away again. And I thought that whole encounter was a really interesting and fun social scene to listen to, and wouldn't have happened if all the things that didn't happen beforehand hadn't happened. I think that's part of a tabletop role-playing story, is that like a lot of the intrigue and suspense that is built in addition to any intentional like setting up of a story that GMs are doing is that sense the whole time of not knowing exactly what's going to happen. If you wanted to just script what would happen in the story, you wouldn't be playing a tabletop RPG. You'd be writing a story. So part of that and part of this story is you don't know what's going to happen. And especially Call of Cthulhu, part of that whole system is based on this idea of the most extreme, you don't know what's going to happen, of like you could die at like any point because there's these monsters that you can't comprehend. You don't know if you're going to be able to beat them.
Yeah.
So, all in all, I think it makes for a different kind of story, you're right, but to me it did not feel like, oh, that whole scene didn't need to happen, because it does influence the next scene. Like, all of the things that they're doing, because the whole story is a set of making a decision for what the characters are going to do next, which is most stories. Like, that's how stories go. It's just in a different, more hands-on way almost, of being like, okay, we did this thing, this was the result, what are we going to decide to do next? And that decision-making process is part of it.
Yeah.
So it didn't ever feel like anything was a complete waste to me. It didn't feel like there were scenes that I ever felt like, oh, that didn't need to happen.
Yeah.
However, my last point is I will say there's a little bit of that sense, if nothing else, because this was explicitly something where they let their Patreon supporters decide what system they were going to play, because they knew they wanted to do something that wasn't D&D. And so they are learning this system completely new, which does impact, you might not know as well how to handle setting up a scene, or like the actions you have available to you, or how to GM something if you're still learning the system a little bit. So I will agree there's some parts that maybe aren't the most smooth because of that, and I think they could tell an even better story if they ran another Call of Cthulhu campaign. But overall, those are my thoughts.
Yeah. I don't think the system itself had a, like, I clearly they were learning it, and that's fine, you know? That didn't pose a lot of problems to me, because the mechanical parts were like, you know, it's like, okay, that's the normal like D&D talk. I get what you mean though, that it also changes how you think, you know, as a player and as a DM, because you don't know what's possible.
Yep.
But I do think, I don't think we're gonna agree on this. I think there were a lot of moments where I was like, yeah, that didn't need to happen. It wasn't interesting. Like, even after that that bunker scene you just talked about to me was way too long because I obviously know it's Rolla.
That rocked, dude.
It was. I like that they played Kashmir, the song, but it was just way too long because I know what's happening on the other side. It's a mildly amusing reveal.
Yeah, and that's what's awesome.
Yeah, but it just goes on too long.
Dramatic irony.
Yeah,
ever
sure.
Heard it?
But that's the thing. Like if it was a movie, it would not have, because Rand wants to do this and he wants to do that and he like wants to grab a gun and beer and a suicide note, you know, like and a grenades. Like he wants to do all these things, and so it just keeps going on. And like I know that the moment that this thing gets revealed, it's gonna be like, well, that was all pointless. So okay, and then
but it's not.
But it is though. But it is like none of that stuff matters.
No, because
he wrote that note. That note doesn't do anything.
Okay, but I thought it was a really interesting, like seeing him write that note was one of the moments where if you were complaining about, oh, there's stuff from their backstories that didn't get touched on enough, like that was one of the scenes where it was like, oh, he's just laying out, here's my lingering feelings about this thing that happened and my relationship with my family. Like, I thought it was cool to see, okay, this is how this character acts when he's dying and thinks he might be about to die.
But it's not as interesting because I know after it doesn't matter after the fact, but two, I know while it's happening that it doesn't matter. You know what I mean?
I think that this also, I think a lot of our disagreements come down to how plot focused you are and how character focused I am, which is kind of fine and good to have both points of view. However, anytime you say that doesn't matter, I'm like, okay, you mean that didn't influence do they win or lose?
It doesn't influence like anything else in the story.
It influences your experience as the listener of knowing this character.
Yeah, but if they cough for 20 minutes straight, that influences my experience, you know? Like, you know, I mean, that's a bit of a sassy thing to say, but it's like it doesn't, sure, I got it. That did not add much value to me. I'm like, okay, I get it. Again, dude feels bad about it. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, you know? And it's not like the players were good actors. Like, I didn't, honestly, quite impressed. Fairly impressed how well these guys act.
Yeah.
But I was like, what does this scene mean? It doesn't do anything. Not going anywhere. You know, we're not resolving
I disagree.
We're not resolving the mystery. We're not doing anything. We're not, and it goes on so long.
I don't know if I could, like, explain it all without just getting into a lot of, like, I don't know how to spell out exactly, like, no, this is why I felt like that scene had weight to me, because it was a lot of emotional and character. Like I said, it's not just like, here's the impact that had on the plot.
Yeah.
It's a lot more wishy-washy than that, which I think a lot of people will like. I also think you're probably right. A fair chunk of people will be like, hey, what happened? But I think those people should not listen to a tabletop RPG podcast.
Sure. So that would be kind of, I think, probably my biggest complaint with this podcast. You know, it's fairly long. I know, relatively to the longest D&D podcast.
Hey, other tabletop RPG podcast listeners, not that long. 4 episodes.
But other podcast listeners, it's pretty long, and it's the story is not. It's not like a story you might read or watch, right? It's improvised, it's a game, and so it's not going to be, the story itself is going to be less good, you know?
Okay, wait, hold on. I'm just going back to talking about how long this podcast is. This podcast is 4 episodes that are each 3-ish hours or less, because like the first episode's like 2 hours. It's 10 to 12 hours. You think that's long?
I do.
How long do you think a regular podcast is?
I mean, but when you say podcast, right? You're talking about a podcast that has a beginning and an end, right? Because most podcasts, right?
But yeah, also, if you're talking about the average podcast listener, you did not say the average short audio drama listener. Because even audio drama, I think 20 hours or so is probably average.
Sure, but that's almost more... It's long compared to most podcasts, is what I mean. You know what I mean? Like,
I don't think that's true. You think most podcasts are less than 10 hours?
Yeah, I mean, this is a like ask.
I
of your
don't think
time.
that's true at all.
For sure, podcasts, right? Most podcasts are like a dude talking podcast, right? This is It's an hour. It's an hour and a half. You know, if you're Joe Rogan, sometimes you do a 4, right? You do that's super long. 12 hours is a big ask for people's time, you know? People have so many other things they can do.
But you're saying this whole podcast compared to one episode of a dude's talking podcast?
That's what I mean. It's just longer. If you want the whole experience, because if you want the whole experience of this show, you have to listen to the whole thing, right? You have to listen to the whole thing. You have to listen to 12 hours. If you go listen to a different podcast, it's not as big of a commitment, right? I think that's kind of part of the value of reviewing this.
I think you would listen to like 10-ish hours though, if you want to say you like are a listener of that podcast.
Yeah, but if you want to try it, you want the full experience, listen to one episode.
That's not the whole experience though. That's trying it.
That you want you want a whole experience. Like you're like, I want to know what this thing looks like. And so we'll go through one episode. If you go through one episode of just roll with it, you don't have the whole experience. You don't know how like the story ends, right? You don't get to have the like there's no closure for you. You're like, well, okay, I don't know if it's good.
You get a taste though, which is what you're talking about.
Yeah, but you don't get the whole, like you don't know. Okay, is this good? Is this bad? How does it end? Like I don't know. You know what I mean?
I think you do though. You know, okay, are these people I like? Does this story pacing seem like something I like?
Okay, but that's the thing about...
You're not going to decide if something's good or bad if it has an ending, if you haven't gotten to the ending?
I don't understand what the question means.
Like, you're saying if it's a talk podcast, you can just listen to an hour or so and be like, okay, I understand the whole vibe. But you can't do that if there's an ending?
Sure. I mean, like, I wouldn't want to, right? Because I don't know how the story ends. Because I'm here for the story.
And that's what I'm saying is that's you. And you keep saying this is longer than most podcasts, which is not true.
It's empirically true. I mean, okay, if you want...
It's not.
Okay, if we need to be more specific, then I think...
You do need to be more specific.
You should say D&D podcast. Or you should even say audio drama, storytelling podcast, which I still think that this is longer than...
But then even any other podcast that's like a talk show podcast is also going to be longer.
I'm not with you, man. I'm just not with you on this, dog.
I'm saying the runtime of this podcast is less than the runtime of most podcasts. The number is smaller.
Then listening to all episodes of
yeah.
Listener, you decide. You decide what you think.
Of listening to all episodes, which is what you would do if you're comparing the total runtime of this podcast.
Listener, you decide if you think 12 hours is long or you think it's really short. If you think Sam's crazy, you think Honor's crazy, you think we're both crazy. It's up to you.
Tell us who's crazy at podpodcastcastpod@gmail.com.
Can you just email in just one word, just subject line crazy.
And we'll know it's which one of us you think is crazy.
Honor Sam. Would love that. If you could, it would make my day.
Please. Let's set up a poll.
I think we could do that on Spotify.
I think we can. At least on YouTube.
Yeah, maybe I'll do that. Maybe we'll put up a poll.
We'll do that on YouTube. Probably.
I like walking back that commitment very quick. Probably. Maybe. It could happen.
Okay, but I can edit out the probably.
Good.
And I'm willing to.
All right. So I thought that was going to be a big point of disagreement.
And you're right.
Honor. I think we've kind of got almost all the thoughts that we could possibly have about this podcast out there.
I have so many more, but not enough time.
How would you rate this podcast?
I would rate this podcast at probably 4 out of 5 pods.
Wow.
I think that, I really like this podcast. I like all of the Just Roll With It stuff I've listened to. I'll say 3.75.
Okay.
Because I do think there's Just Roll With It stuff that I've listened to that I like even more. But I do really like this campaign. I would love to see them play Call of Cthulhu again because I do think they were learning the ropes, but it really seems like something up Charlie's alley as a GM and that the other players could really sink their teeth into. I think there's better Just Roll With It campaigns. I'm kind of comparing everything to Riptide because it is the perfect podcast for me, but I think it's good. I think it's entertaining. It's funny. There's drama. There's little characters you can be obsessed with. And also, Grizzly Plays wrote the song that he made a joke about in the campaign, Smoke with the Devil. That is actually really good. Yeah. And I do listen to that song regularly.
That's fun. Interesting. I say interesting because you just finish the podcast.
I knew about this song though.
Oh, okay.
I've listened to this song for years.
It was pretty funny. It was good. It was a funny bit. I would rate this podcast a 2.5 out of 5. I think it's pretty standard.
That feels
I'm
harsh.
sorry. I hate to freaking whatcha! That's me with a whip being harsh.
You didn't think it was like entertaining?
No, I think it's average. That's what I mean. I think it's solidly.
I feel like it's slightly above average.
I don't know. Having listened to a lot of D&D podcasts now, I haven't, and also I should say, I guess not having listened to a lot of like total trash. I've never rated I think a 1 in this show. 2.5. It feels average. These are funny guys. I was not particularly interested in the story. I mean, I was interested. I was actually really interested. Sorry.
I could tell by the way that you were like, we don't need to recap the whole thing, when normally you want to recap the whole
Well,
plot.
I also feel like, I mean, the story to me was interesting to start. I was really interested in the characters, but it was too long. There was and it was unfocused, which is part of this, right?
That feels wild to me. I'm bumping my rating up to 4 again to outbalance you. Yeah.
So it was that's kind of, I think it's pretty standard. If you really, I was gonna say if you like D&D podcasts, you might like this. Really, what I think is if you like any of these guys, you'll like this.
If you like these guys, I also think if you like Call of Cthulhu, it's pretty fun.
There's not that many.
And I do know there's people who are like, yes, I like Call of Cthulhu, because if you're into a niche tabletop RPG, you'll go seek out anything with that.
There's not that many other Call of Cthulhu.
I know my Call of Cthulhu fiends.
Yeah, there's not that many other podcasts that do this. If you like D&D podcasts in general, I think there's a lot of other podcasts you can go listen to.
I think it's good.
All right, Honor's laptop died / the bugs got her.
Yeah, but I came back like key and stone.
What a champion. What resurrect Kaplowy. That's me casting my spell.
Perfect.
But there you go. That's our thoughts on Blood in the Bayou, which is a season of Just Roll With It. If you like these guys, you'll probably like this show, so it might be worth it for you on the Patreon. If you like other D&D podcasts, maybe.
Yeah, I'll say on the Patreon, you can pay $5 and get access to all of their past Patreon content, which is a lot. So it's definitely a good deal.
Sure. So, but this one is probably for the D&D heads out there, if anyone was still curious.
Yep.
All right. Well, if anyone was still curious about anything about Podpodcastcast, you can send us an email at podpodcastcastpod@gmail.com, and we'll read it out on the show. We would love your thoughts, your input. Email us, please. Somebody's got to email us. Let us know who's crazy. We need to know.
Need to know who's crazy.
Also, leave us a review wherever. I know you're listening to this somewhere. I know you are. Give me that little 5-star. Give me the 5-star. I need it.
Ow. Need to eat.
Yep. That's our nutrient.
We only eat 5 stars.
Also, follow us, and you'll be notified the next time we get an episode out, which will be in 2 weeks from now. And also, you know what's going to happen in 2 weeks from now? A wonderful occasion when I get to talk to my friend Honor again. Honor, thanks for potting with me.
Thank you for potting with me, my friend Sam.
Thank you for showing me this podcast. It was enjoyable.
Yeah.
I want to be clear.
Yes, thank you for being roped into. I picked just a little sliver of Just Roll With It. And also I was like, oh, whoops, I made Sam listen to another horror thing. So good job, not cowering in fear.
It just keeps happening. And you know what keeps happening? This show. So
yeah. Stay
tuned in, listener. We appreciate you listening, and you'll hear us on the airwaves again.
True.
Okay. Until then, bye.
Bye.